Welcome to the Aesthetics Lab, where we build the look of leadership that is unmistakable. Welcome to the new year of the Aesthetics of Leadership podcast, season 10. 10 years of interview podcasts that have brought us to this pivotal moment in 2026. But before we go any further, I want to name something that most men won't say out loud in January. This season carries pressure. Pressure, pressure to decide, pressure to change, pressure to make this the year. And underneath all of that, if we're honest, there's often fear. Fear that this year might look a lot like last year. Fear that we'll start strong, but then we'll fade. Fear that something is wrong with us because we want more, but we can't seem to sustain change. If that's you, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not weak. And you are not failing because you lack discipline. You see, most men don't fail in January because they don't try hard enough. They fail because they're disciplined in the wrong direction. So today, we're going to talk about why that happens biologically, psychologically, and identity-wise, and why this year needs a different starting point. That starting point is alignment before acceleration. And you can look across the podcast spectrum, you can look across social media, and everybody is making New Year's resolutions. Well, gentlemen, I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. I believe in the physics of revolutions. Let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain right now in January. January creates a surge of motivation because everybody's talking about what they're going to do differently. Your brain loves novelty, new calendars, new routines, new promises. Remember dopamine, the neurotransmitter tied to motivation and anticipation? It spikes when we imagine a better future. But here's the problem most men don't understand. Dopamine is tied to seeking, not sustaining. Your brain is wired to chase what feels new, not to maintain what feels unfamiliar. So when men set resolutions, they often rely on motivation alone. They ride the dopamine wave. They sprint. And then, inevitably, within weeks, the novelty wears off. Cortisol rises. Old habits resurface. Identity friction kicks in. And the brain defaults back to what's familiar, not what's ideal. Now, look, that's not a character flaw. That is simply neuroscience at work. Now, not to complicate, but to show you the gravity, let's layer some psychology on top of that. Most resolutions fail because they're built on behavior without identity. Men say, I'm going to work out more. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to be more disciplined. I'm going to be more present. But if your self-image hasn't changed, your nervous system resists the behavior. Your brain is constantly asking one question. Is this who we are? If the answer is no, it creates internal drag, and that drag shows up as procrastination. Sound familiar? Self-sabotage. Sound familiar? Exhaustion. Sound familiar? Inconsistency. Sound familiar? And none of this is because you don't want to change, but because your identity hasn't caught up with your intention. So discipline without alignment feels heavy. Motivation without meaning fades fast. And effort without identity becomes punishment. This is especially true for men. See, men are wired to do, to fix, to push, but most men were never taught how to examine who they are before they act. This is why I've made a shift this year. You may have noticed in earlier episodes some new language, some new framing, some new direction. My work here has evolved because the problem is deeper than performance, and I've spoken in over 300 interviews with top performers in personal health, personal growth, fitness, wellness, sports, business, you name it. We have talked about performance. But this work has evolved because the problem is deeper than performance. For years, I have watched capable, driven men do all the right things, take all the great advice from this show, and still feel fragmented. Successful, but restless. Disciplined, but disconnected. The leadership advice I've given on this show wasn't enough. Mindset talk alone wasn't enough. What was missing was integration. And truly, that's the heart behind the new aesthetics of leadership. The Aesthetics of Leadership podcast, the men's summit that we host, the Aesthetic Path, our 12-week integration series, the Aesthetic Standard, our year-long mentorship program, and our Inner Circle invitation-only community. That's the heart behind the aesthetics of leadership. Now, when I say aesthetics, I'm not talking about appearance. I'm talking about the felt sense of alignment. How a man moves when his internal beliefs and external actions match. How he shows up under pressure. How his values live in his body, his habits, his leadership. Because to me, alignment isn't theoretical. It's embodied. And that realization has led to a partnership I want to talk about directly. This year, starting season 10 of the Aesthetics of Leadership podcast, and in all the ventures associated with the Aesthetics of Leadership, I've partnered with my mentor, my friend, my coach, Matt Norrby. And I want to be clear about why this matters. Matt isn't just a fitness coach. He is not about surface level transformation. He understands what most men miss, that the body is not separate from identity. Your nervous system lives in your body. Your habits live in your body. Your stress lives in your body. Your confidence, or lack thereof, lives in your body. Matt brings precision, discipline, execution, but more importantly, he brings embodiment. He helps men close that gap between intention and action by training the nervous system not just the willpower. Matt provides structure, consistency, and the physical proof that change is happening. Because we believe when a man sees himself doing differently, his identity begins to shift. That's where this partnership becomes powerful. Inner alignment meets outer structure. Belief meets behavior. Reflection meets movement. This is not about aesthetics for show. It's about integrity. Now, before I talk about what's coming next, I want to give you something practical, something you can carry into this year starting today. I want you to slow down for just a minute and ask yourself 3 questions honestly. The first question, write this one down. Where am I over efforting right now? What I mean by that is, where am I pushing because I don't want to sit with uncertainty or truth? The second question, where am I avoiding honesty? What conversation, particularly with yourself, have you been postponing? And third, if nothing changed externally this year, who would I need to become internally for this to still be a meaningful year? Now sit with those. Don't rush the answer to check the box. Alignment for you begins in the answers to those 3 questions. In just a few weeks, Matt and I are hosting our second men's summit in Derry, Northern Ireland. And this matters. Not because it's an event, but because men need spaces where they don't have to perform. This event is not hype. It is not a motivational push. It's a room for men who are tired of carrying everything alone. Men who want clarity instead of noise. Men who know there's more alignment available, but don't know where to go and don't want another surface level answer. If that resonates, we welcome you. Now, I know you may not be able to travel to Ireland, but we're going to be offering some online intensives as well. We're going to be hosting live summits in the United Kingdom and here in the United States. If any of this resonates, the details are at the website for the podcast, theaestheticsofleadership.com. No pressure, just an invitation. So let me close with this. This year doesn't need louder promises. It doesn't need harder effort. It doesn't need you trying to outrun yourself. It needs honesty, alignment, and fewer men pretending they're fine when they're not. So before you choose another year, make sure you know who's doing the chasing. I'm glad you're here. I'm grateful that you continue to listen to this podcast. And I'm looking forward to walking this year with you, aligned and embodied with the principles of the aesthetics of leadership. It is the look of leadership that is unmistakable. Happy New Year. Take your assessment at aestheticsofleadership.com/purpose.